I'm a fan of the Boston Bruins. Been a fan for a long time. And I have defended Brad Marchand over the last 6 months and told people he's changed. Last night, he slew-footed Nicholas Kronwall of Detroit. And I've watched the replay a few times, and I gotta say, Mr. Marchand, you're an idiot. You have a bad reputation with the NHL. I don't know how many games they're going to give him. They've called him to the office to chat. So when you get called into the office, that means they're going to have a nice long talk with you, and you're going to miss some time. Brad Marchand has been the most consistent Bruins forward. Effort, points, goals. He's been most consistent. The Bruins are in a position where they likely don't make the playoffs this year, and any length of suspension for Marchand isn't going to help. Somebody asked me today at work about the Bruins play and what was going on, and that Pastrnak hit 20 goals, but he'd been at 19 for a long time. And I said, yeah, he couldn't put the puck in the net. And I stated their most dangerous forward for about the last month has been Frankie Vatrano, which, before the season, I talked a lot about how I wanted to see Frankie Vatrano, and I think he has the potential. The problem is he shouldn't be their most dangerous forward. He shouldn't be the most noticeable forward. Bergeron seems to have aged terribly over the last year and a half, and Krejci just looks either he doesn't want to play there anymore, or he's hurt, or he's just lost it. But for Marchand to slew-foot somebody with his reputation and his history is just reckless and stupid. And it makes it harder for me to defend him on any level. It really does. I've been accused of being non-objective in the past for my opinion on the Kadri hit on Sedin, and I stand by that. I still think it was a dirty hit. My statement that a hit on, I believe it was Anders Shaw by Torrey Krug, I believe that was clean. It was, according to the NHL head office. This was not. It was a dirty hit. So it was a 90s style slew foot. This is when suspension started coming in, was the slew foots. And I've considered loading up my PS4 and doing some homework and looking up old video footage of hits and going through the ones that are clean and the ones that are dirty, and going back as far as the Scott Stevens hits, which back then were clean but now would be considered dirty hits. And I don't know, I can't defend Marchand on this one. And it's a shame. It's like, your best friend has a drinking problem and you really want them to get better. And then they're good for a long while, and then they just fall right off that wagon, and everybody sees them make an ass of themselves, and you're like, man, I don't know how I can defend them again. And I'm sort of there with Marchand. Only instead of drinking, it's stupid acts of violence against against fellow players. The worst of which was against former Canuck Sami Salo. That was the tipping point for me, because Sami Salo was A, known for being fragile, and B, he wouldn't hurt a fly. Sami Salo was one of the gentlest players I ever saw, and one of the most gentlemanly. And for Marchand to low bridge him and drop him on his head was as classless a move as I've seen anybody commit in a Bruins jersey. I mean, you got to remember, when I watch Boston Vancouver games, I'm really excited because I'm watching two teams I really like against each other, and it's fun to watch. It's usually fun games. And I don't really care who wins. I'm very casual about it. And some years I cheer for Boston to win them, and some years I cheer for Vancouver. It depends on where they are in the standings, who needs to win more. which roster I like better in that moment. But when Marchand low bridged Salo, I then said out loud, I hope Vancouver fucking kills them after that hit. I hope Boston just loses big and they can turn to him at the end of the night and say thanks. I've often heard about how big hits can turn a game around. Oh, that gives you momentum, and they can. But when it's a dirty hit, it can have the opposite effect. Instead of firing up your team, you just woke up the other team. You probably alerted the ref to your presence on the ice, and not in a good way. And if a referee misses what you did, if say Marchand hits somebody dirty and he misses it, the referee can look at replays on the scoreboard and go, wow. And then the next time Marchand even sneezes in somebody's direction, he's off for a double minor. He's off for a minor, he's off for a major, he's off for whatever the referee can justify giving him in that moment. Because he knows he blew it earlier that night. And Marchand shouldn't be in the game. Kronwall, whatever you may think of him as a player, whether you think he's slow or he's not very effective anymore or whatever, or he's not Lidstrom, nobody's Lidstrom. I really feel bad for him having to take the mantle from Nick Lidstrom. I think that's just awful. I mean, there isn't a defenseman in the NHL, and that includes Brent Burns, that could just go, yeah, I'm Nick Lidstrom. I think Nick Lidstrom, I would put probably right up there with Bork. I'd put Ray Bork as my favorite defenseman I've ever seen, probably the best defenseman I've ever seen, and Nick Lidstrom probably second. And I hated Detroit in the early 2000s, but Nick Lidstrom, best defenseman I ever saw in every part of the game. Well, Kronwall had to take over for him, and there's been endless criticism heaped on him since then. And he's not he's not he's not a fighter. He's not a dirty player. And for Marchand to slew foot him, it's just so stupid. While the Bruins are fighting to get into the playoffs and get out of this slump they've been in. And Marchand decides, well, I'm going to go back to being the old me for just this moment. I'm going to cheap shot somebody because I can, because he's standing vulnerable in the middle of the ice. Of course, there'll be hockey purists that say, well, Kronwall should keep his head up. Oh, absolutely. When the puck's nowhere near you and you're, just skating in the middle of the ice and nobody's anywhere near you, you should make sure that nobody's coming up behind you to slew foot you. Slew foot is one of those things that I hate most. If we want to get into what I don't like with a hit and when a hit makes me upset, it's when a player is in a really vulnerable position and they didn't put themselves in it. Like, I'm not talking about like when a defenseman comes out of a corner and he's skating across the center of the ice with his head down. Yeah, no, you're lined up for a major hit. You're lined up to get absolutely drilled. But I don't like hits when it's just a cheap shot, when it's on a guy who is maybe smaller, skilled player, and it's late. And I don't like hits that they don't help anything. They don't make any kind of positive contribution to the game for either team, other than to piss the other team off and to probably piss your team off too. Because after Kronwall gets run over, it's a good thing Detroit's a bunch of gentle players, because you do that against Philly, you'd be lucky to come out of there alive. And I'm just talking about the fans. I'm not even talking about the players. If Marchand does that in Philly to Wayne Simmons or Provorov, the Philly fans are coming down out of the stands at him. City of Brotherly Love, I tell you. Better call it City of Brotherly Love or they'll beat the crap out of you. It's hard for me to defend anything Marchand does anymore. And, it's funny because I've really talked a lot in my videos about how he's changed and he's better and Claude Julien has good control over him. And this incident may be an argument in favor of firing Claude Julien, because when an incident like that takes place, I look at him first and go, why didn't you have control over what he did there? because I've watched Marchand go out on the ice and get close to that edge, seen him go over the bench and seen Julian grab him by the neck, or scruff of the neck on his jersey, and just get right in his ear like, don't do it. I know you're mad. Don't do it. Maintain your cool. It does no good for us right now if you blow it and you go out there and you dirty cheap shot somebody. And is Julian not doing that anymore? Is Marchand not listening to Julian? When I was watching the boys play hockey today, I told Yvonne one way that I can usually tell if a coach is on his way out is when he stands behind the bench and he's yelling and screaming and he's pissed off, and every player's just looking straight forward. They don't move, they don't flinch, they don't talk to each other. It means he's lost the room. The team's like, you know what? If we just pretend he's not there, maybe he'll go away. So I wouldn't be surprised if Boston fires Claude Julien before. I wouldn't be surprised just before the deadline if they think they have a team that can make the playoffs. I don't think they can, but they might think they can. And Marchand's bullshit could get him fired because if let's say Marchand gets a five game suspension, just throw that out there. And I don't really care how long it is. I don't care if it's 8 or 10. No matter what it is, I'll stand up and applaud it because he's stupid. He's got a prior record, and there's no forgiveness given to him, and there shouldn't be. No matter how long he's a clean player, that record stays with him. Matt Cook, the last few years he was in the NHL, was a pretty clean player. But when he hit somebody dirty, that prior record was right there in his face, and rightfully so. And it's easy to forget that Matt Cook went out as a relatively clean player, but he did. So, if Marchand's out for say 5 games, there's no way Boston wins more than 2 of them. That's just 2-2-1 is the best I think they could hope for. They're out of the playoffs. I watched Toronto beat the crap out of Detroit tonight, and the plays in the game and just the confidence by those rookies was just startling. Boston cannot afford to fall further behind. And Brad Marchand took it on himself to say, you know what? That Kronwall kid, kind of vulnerable there. I'm going to go ahead and hit him. And it doesn't matter to me what anybody thinks because it's my call.
Body, there is a trip, certainly, and it's dirty, and it's Brad Marchand. But your thought yesterday on the kicking out of the feet of Nicholas Kronwall?
I thought it was really dirty. And, I just wonder, and Steve Ott's been out with a shoulder injury. If Steve Ott were in the lineup last night, do you really think Brad Marchand would have done that? It's a dirty play. He takes Kronwall's legs right out from underneath him. And if you go back further on that play, Nick Kronwall got tied up with Patrice Bergeron at the other end of the ice. Bergeron went down, but they were side to side. I noticed that Marchand put his hand up to the referee saying, hey, why not a penalty? So to me, it was premeditated. You saw Kronwall take down Bergeron. I don't think it was a penalty, and I'm looking at it honestly, objectively, not from a Red Wing perspective. I don't think there was anything there. Marchand sees that, puts his hand up to the ref, nothing, made a beeline down the ice, and takes out Kronwall's legs. He's been called for slew-footing before. I saw a couple in the Leafs game with Calgary the other night. It's going undetected. It's a dirty play, and I'll say it again. If Steve Ott were in the lineup, I doubt Brad Marchand would have done it. But if you're not going to send a message to these guys, and to do it to someone like Nick Kronwall, the players know Nick Kronwall's on one leg. They know his problem with his knee issues. And yes, he's hit some people in his career for sure, and some of them haven't been the cleanest. But to do that to a veteran guy like that, there is so little respect in the game, it bothers me.
Suspendable?
I think it's suspendable. Whether the league does, I don't know. They haven't lately. Brad Marchand's been suspended in 2015 for slew-footing. I think he's had 12 games through his career due to suspension. To me, it is. Whether the league does it, I don't know.
You got the 2 on the Brassard slew foot. But the issue with this one, though, is it's not a slew foot. He doesn't extend the arm and push down. And it's a trip. And it's, Ken, I'm with you. It's dirty. But I don't know that it rises to supplemental, though.
Well, the problem is by the definition
Damn
of
close to slew foot.
It's not. I thought it was.
Okay, it's a dirty play.
Ken, I thought I hated it. I thought it was dirty, and there's no place in the game for it for me.
Agreed.
You hit a guy head on, but you do that, it's almost like running a guy from behind into the boards for me. You're
Yes.
catching an unsuspecting player in a vulnerable. I didn't like it. I thought it was dirty. And I thought Brad's got to go past this. He's too good a player. He's too good a player to be still doing stuff like this. And I know things happen.
100%.
Things happen.
Yep.
Player, and not only.
Yeah. So that sums it up. So there, I showed you guys the hit. Sorry, it was on my phone. That's how I'll do things from now on. I'll show you guys hits when they happen. Just because the Cody Eakin thing, people got pissed off. I didn't show it. And other plays that I've had videos for. It's dirty, like they said, and it doesn't fit the definition of slew foot. But God, it really looks like a slew foot hit. And you guys tell me in the comments below. You guys saw the play. You guys heard the commentary by the Sportsnet guys, and I agree with McLean on this completely. How many games does he get? And I have no problem with whatever number you guys come up with, no matter how high it is, because he knows better. And hearing Ken Daniels saying, "Look, Marchand's, hey, where's a penalty on that?" That's where Claude Julien comes into it. Claude Julien's coached Brad Marchand for over half a decade. He knows when Marchand's off, and he should be calling him over to the bench and talking him down. That's when Julien should be up on the bench yelling, "Brad, now!" And then telling Frankie Vetrano or whoever else, jump on the ice and take his place. And then, hey, calm the fuck down. That's when the coach's job is that. Recognize when a guy like Marchand, who you should be watching at all times anyways, is ready to go out there and do something stupid. Now, the one thing I take issues with is if Steve Ott was in the game, absolutely Marchand's still making that hit. There's no deterrent from Marchand because in the moment, he's pissed. He is still making that hit, whether Ott's in the game or not. He doesn't care. I've had videos before on whether or not enforcers are deterrents, but Steve Ott is not a deterrent for Brad Marchand. Marchand has no problem at all after he dirty hits Nick Kronwall turning around and getting into a fist fight with somebody else. That doesn't bother him in the slightest. He enjoys it. So no, that's not a problem. So, anyways, yeah, it's a shame because he had really cleaned up his game, and coming out of the World Cup of Hockey, I was like, look, he's a very good player now. He's not playing that way anymore. And then this shit. And it looks bad on Julien. Thanks for watching. I'll be talking to you all again soon.